Hi everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you. It was just another quiet evening. The kind of night where everything felt still, almost too still. I was curled up on the couch, lost in a book I'd been meaning to finish for weeks. The faint hum of the heater in the background, and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors, were the only sounds filling the room. Leo, my German shepherd, was sprawled out on his usual spot near the fireplace, his warm golden coat glistening in the flickering light. He looked peaceful, the rise and fall of his ***T in perfect rhythm. And for a moment I couldn't help but smile. Leo wasn't just my cute dog, he was my anchor. He had this uncanny ability to sense when something was off with me, always there to nozzle my hand or rest his head on my lap. But that night, as I glanced at him one last time before turning back to my book, I noticed something. His ears twitch, and his head shot up, as if he'd heard something I couldn't. Leo. I called out softly, half expecting him to settle back down. Instead, he turned his head sharply toward me, his eyes wide and alert. That was strange. Leo was never like this. He was the calmest cute dog I'd ever known, the type who'd sleep through thunderstorms without batting an eye. But tonight there was something different about him, something unsettling. I tried brushing it off, thinking maybe it was just one of those random moments cute dogs have. But deep down I felt it too. A strange unease began creeping in. When I couldn't quite shake, I set my book aside and leaned forward, watching him closely. He hadn't taken his eyes off me, and it was almost as if he was trying to tell me something. His gaze was intense, more than just the casual looks he'd give me when he wanted a treat, or a belly rub it sent to chill down my spine. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked, my voice trembling just a bit. Leo didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. And then out of nowhere, he let out a low, deep growl. My heart skipped a beat. Leo had never growled like that before. Not at me, not at anyone. It wasn't aggressive, but it was enough to make me feel uneasy. I stood up, trying to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe he'd heard something outside. A raccoon or a stray cat, all right. Let's see what's going on, I muttered, walking toward the window. The street outside was empty, the same quiet suburban neighborhood I'd lived in for years. Nothing seemed out of place. But as I turned back to look at Leo, I saw it. He had moved. Leo was now standing by the couch, his posture rigid, his eyes locked onto something behind me. My breath caught in my throat. "Leo, what is it?" I whispered, too afraid to turn around. He didn't bark, didn't growl again, just stood there, every muscle in his body tense. For a moment I felt frozen, my mind racing with the 990 possibilities. And then, just as I mustered the courage to turn, Leo suddenly lunged forward and grabbed my arm with his mouth. It wasn't a bite. He was careful, gentle, even, but the force of it startled me. "Jay, what are you doing?" I exclaimed, trying to pull my arm free. But he wouldn't let go. His grip was firm, and he started pulling me, guiding me toward the hallway. It was unlike anything he'd ever done before. Leo wasn't the kind of cute dog to act out or behave erratically. This was deliberate, intentional, and it terrified me. I let him lead me, my heart pounding in my ***T. He stopped just as we reached the door to the basement. My hand hovered over the doorknob, unsure of what to do next. Leo let go of my arm and sat down, his eyes never leaving mine. There was something so urgent, almost pleading in his expression. It was as if he was begging me to trust him. But why? What was he trying to tell me? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Whatever this was, it wasn't normal, and I had a sinking feeling that whatever was about to happen would change everything. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my hands still hovering over the cold doorknob. Leo's intense gaze didn't waver, and the weight of his stare made my ***T tighten. "Leo, what's down there?" I whispered, almost as if I were scared of the answer. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was just a strange noise, something he thought I needed to see. Maybe a squirrel had somehow found its way inside. But deep down I knew it wasn't something that simple. Leo let out a low whine, his ears pinned back, and notched my leg gently with his nose. It was almost as if he was saying, "Please, you need to see this." My fingers trembled as I gripped the knob, the cool metal sending a shiver through my body. Slowly I turned it, the soft click of the latch echoing in the silence. The door creaked open, revealing the dark staircase leading into the basement. I hesitated at the top step, peering into the black void below. The faint smell of dampness and old wood drifted up. Familiar yet unsettling tonight, I flicked on the light switch, and the single bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered weakly, before casting its dim yellow glow over the space. Everything seemed normal at first glance. The cluttered shelves lined with old boxes, the laundry machines humming faintly in the corner. It was just the same basement I'd been in 99 times before. But Leo didn't budge. He stayed by my side, his tail still, his body stiff as a board. He let out another low whine, his eyes darting toward the far end of the basement. "What is it, Leo?" I asked, my voice cracking under the weight of my nerves. He took a step forward, pausing to glance back at me, as if waiting for me to follow. I reluctantly descended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. My heart felt like it was pounding in my ears, the sound drowning out every other noise around me. Leo stopped in front of an old storage closet, tucked away in the far corner. It was one of those places I barely ever opened, mostly because it was filled with forgotten junk, old coats, broken appliances, random odds and ends that had no other home. Leo sat down in front of the closet door, his body tense, his gaze locked on the handle. He whimpered softly, the sound breaking my heart a little. "What's in there?" I murmured, my voice barely audible. My hand moved toward the handle, my fingers hesitating just inches away for a split second. I thought about turning around and walking back upstairs, pretending none of this was happening, but Leo wouldn't let me. He let out a bark, not loud but sharp and commanding, and it jolted me into action. I opened the door slowly, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The light from the basement barely reached inside, casting long shadows over the contents of the closet. At first, everything looked just as I'd left it. Boxes piled on top of each other, an old vacuum cleaner leaning against the wall. But then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the corner, tucked behind a stack of boxes, was a small wooden ch**t. It looked ancient, the wood darkened with age, the brass latch tarnished and dull. I didn't remember ever putting it there. In fact, I didn't even recognize it. "What is this?" I muttered under my breath, glancing at Leo. He stood there, his tail wagging slightly now, as if relieved that I'd found it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled the ch**t out into the light. It was heavier than it looked, and the wood felt rough under my fingers. My heart raced as I unmatched it, the faint metallic click sending a shiver down my spine. I lifted the lid slowly, the hinges creaking like they hadn't been moved in decades. Inside I found a bundle of old papers and photographs, all yellowed and brittle. With H there were letters, two handwritten. In elegant cursive, the ink faded but still legible. My hands trembled as I picked up the first photograph. It was black and white, showing a young couple standing in front of a house that looked eerily familiar. The man had a warm, friendly smile, his arm wrapped protectively around the woman's shoulders. She held a small, cute dog in her arms, a German shepherd with strikingly familiar eyes. I stared at the photo, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The cute dog looked exactly like Leo, same coat, same eyes, same everything. "This can't be real," I whispered, my voice barely audible. I flipped the photo over, and on the back in faded ink were the words Leo, 1960. I felt my breath catch in my throat. It didn't make sense. Leo was only 5 years old. How could this be possible? I rifled through the letters, each one telling a story of the couple's life, their love for their cute dog, and their struggles to keep their family together during difficult times. The more I read, the more I felt connected to them, like I was reading pieces of my own history. And then I found the last letter. It was addressed to the future owner of Leo. My hands shook as I unfolded the fragile paper, the words blurring as tears filled my eyes. It spoke of a bond that transcended time, a connection between souls that could never be broken. It was as if they knew that Leo would somehow find his way back to someone who needed him, someone who would love him as much as they did. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at Leo, who was now sitting quietly by my side, his eyes filled with a knowing look. I didn't understand how or why, but in that moment it didn't matter. All that mattered was the bond we shared, one that felt deeper than anything I'd ever known. I closed the ch***t, my mind swirling with questions I might never have answers to. But as I knelt down and wrapped my arms around Leo, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain. Leo was more than just a cute dog. He was my protector, my companion, and maybe just maybe something far greater than I could ever comprehend. That night I couldn't sleep. The ch***t and its contents sat on the coffee table in the living room like a puzzle, waiting to be solved every time I closed my eyes. The image of the photograph flashed in my mind, the couple, their smiles, and Leo, or at least a cute dog that looked just like him. It all felt too strange, too impossible. Leo lay on the floor beside my bed, his breathing soft and steady, but I couldn't help glancing at him every few minutes. Was he really just my cute dog? Or was there more to this connection, something I couldn't quite explain? As the hours dragged on, I finally decided I couldn't let it go. I tiptoed back downstairs, careful not to wake Leo, though I had a feeling he already knew what I was doing. The ch***t seemed even more mysterious. Under the dim light of the living room lamp, I pulled out the letters again, skimming through the words with a desperate need to understand. There were hints, subtle mentions of strange events. Moments where the couple described their cute dog acting in ways that felt almost human. One letter stood out. It was shorter than the others, written in hurried, almost frantic handwriting. It described a stormy night, much like the one that seemed to be brewing outside now, and how Leo had acted strangely, leading the couple to discover a gas leak in their home just in time. The wife wrote, "It's as if he knew, as if he could sense something we couldn't. Leo isn't just a cute dog, he's something more, though I don't think we'll ever truly understand." The words sent a chill down my spine. I looked over at Leo, who had quietly followed me downstairs, and was now sitting by the couch, watching me with those same knowing eyes. "Is that true, Leo? Have you always been different?" I asked softly, half expecting him to respond. He didn't, of course, but the look he gave me felt like an answer in itself. The wind howled outside, and a sudden gust rattled the windows, making me jump. I glanced at the clock. It was just past 2 a.m. The house felt colder than usual, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Leo stood up, his ears parking up. As he turned toward the front door, he let out a low growl, the kind that made my skin crawl. I moved to the window, peeking through the curtains. The street was empty, the trees swaying violently in the wind. But there was something off, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The street lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the pavement. I turned back to Leo, who was now standing in front of the door, his tail stiff, his body tense. "What is it, Leo?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He let out a single bark, sharp and urgent, and then looked at me, his eyes pleading. I grabbed my coat and flashlight, my heart pounding as I opened the door. The cold night air hit me like a wall, and the sound of the wind was deafening. Leo bolted out into the yard, his movements quick and purposeful. I followed him, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He led me to the edge of the yard, near the old oak tree that had stood there for decades. Leo stopped abruptly, sniffing the ground, and then letting out another bark. I shone the flashlight down, expecting to see nothing out of the ordinary. But there in the dirt was something I hadn't noticed before. A small rusted metal box, half buried beneath the tree roots. My hands trembled as I knelt down, brushing away the dirt and leaves. The box was old, much older than anything else I'd found tonight. The latch was stiff, but with a bit of effort I managed to pry it open. Inside was a single folded piece of paper, and a small golden locket. The locket was delicate, its surface engraved with intricate patterns that glint in the flashlight's beam. I opened it carefully, revealing 3 tiny photographs inside. One of the couple I'd seen earlier, and the other of Leo. My breath caught in my throat. How was this possible? How had it ended up here in my yard? After all these years? I unfolded the paper, the edges brittle and worn. The handwriting was faint but legible, and it read, "To the one who finds this, take care of Leo. He has always found those who need him most." My heart raced as I read the words over and over, trying to make sense of them. Who had written this? And how did they know Leo would end up with me? Tears blurred my vision as I looked at Leo, who was sitting quietly beside me, his tail wagging gently. He leaned against me, resting his head on my shoulder. And for the first time that night, I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. Leo was here for a reason. As we walked back inside, the wind seemed to die down the house, feeling warmer and more welcoming than it had all night. I placed the locket and led her back into the ***T, closing it gently. Whatever mysteries Leo carried with him, I didn't need to solve them all right now. What mattered was that he was here, and he always would be. That night, as I lay in bed with Leo, curled up at my feet, I realized something profound. Some connections go beyond time and explanation, existing simply because they're meant to. Leo wasn't just a cute dog. He was a guardian, a guide, and a constant reminder that sometimes the things we don't understand are the most beautiful of all. The next morning I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window, the warmth of the sunlight filtering through the curtains. Leo was already up sitting by the window with his head tilted slightly, watching the world outside. It was a peaceful sight, one that filled me with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Yet the events of the previous night lingered in my mind, like a dream. I couldn't shake off the ***T, the photograph, the locket. All of it felt surreal, like pieces of a puzzle. I wasn't sure I was ready to solve. I got out of bed and made my way downstairs, finding the ***T exactly where I'd left it. Leo followed me, his tail wagging gently, as if sensing that my curiosity hadn't faded. I sat on the couch, my fingers tracing the edges of the ***T absent-minded. "What now, Leo?" I asked softly, looking at him. He simply tilted his head, his eyes filled with that familiar mix of understanding and mystery. I decided to dig a little deeper. The address on one of the letters caught my eye, an old street name I vaguely recognized. It wasn't far from where I lived, just a few blocks away. My heart raced at the thought of going there, of uncovering more about the couple who had written those letters, and somehow connected to Leo. But part of me was hesitant, unsure of what I'd find. "What do you think, Leo? Should we go?" I asked, half expecting some kind of sign. And then, as if he understood, Leo barked once, his tail wagging with more excitement than before. That settled it. I grabbed my coat, the letters in Leo's leash. The walk to the address was quiet, the crisp morning air making my breath visible in soft clouds. Leo walked beside me, his usual relaxed demeanor replaced with a sense of purpose. It was strange, almost as if he knew where we were going, and why. When we reached the house I stopped in my tracks. It was small and quaint, with an old stone pathway leading to the front door. The shutters were painted a soft green, and the porch had a rocking chair that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Something about the house felt familiar, though I couldn't quite place it. Leo tugged at his leash, urging me forward. I hesitated for a moment before walking up to the porch. The wooden steps creaked under my weight, and my heart pounded in my ***T. As I reached for the doorbell, the chime echoed faintly inside, and I stood there, nerves buzzing as I waited. Moments later, the door opened, and an elderly woman appeared. Her kind eyes crinkled with curiosity as she looked at me, then down at Leo. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice soft and warm. I hesitated, unsure of how to explain everything. "I am sorry to bother you." I began, holding up the letters, "but I found these, and I think they might be connected to this house, and maybe to my cute dog." "Leo." Her eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she just stared at me. Then, a small sad smile formed on her lips. "Leo," she whispered, her gaze shifting to my cute dog. I never thought I'd see him again." The weight of her words hit me like a freight train. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. She opened the door wider, motioning for me to come inside. The house was cozy, filled with the scent of lavender and the faint aroma of baked bread. The walls were lined with photographs, some old, some newer, but one in particular caught my eye. It was the same couple from the letters, smiling warmly in a black and white frame. The woman, who introduced herself as Isabella, sat me down at the kitchen table and began to explain she was the daughter of the couple in the letters. The house had been in her family for generations, and Leo, her parents' cute dog, had been a cherished part of their lives. My father always said Leo was special, she said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. He had this way of showing up when you needed him most. It was like he could sense when someone's heart was heavy. I told her about finding the **T, the photograph and the locket, and as I spoke, tears filled her eyes. My father wrote that letter, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He believed Leo wasn't just a cute dog. He believed Leo was meant to find people who needed him, no matter how much time had passed. The weight of her words settled over me, and I looked at Leo, who was lying by my feet, calm and content. But how is it possible? I asked the question, lingering in the air. Isabella shook her head. Some things aren't meant to be explained, she said. Sometimes we just have to believe. She showed me more photographs, each one telling a story of Leo's time with her parents. There were images of him by their side during storms, by their feet as they read by the fire, and even in the hospital when her father fell ill. He stayed with them until the very end, Isabella said, her voice cracking. And then one day he was just gone. We thought he'd pass, but now seeing him here with you, I think he found you for a reason. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over, and I reached down to stroke Leo's fur. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a warmth I couldn't put into words. Isabella placed her hand on mine, her touch gentle. Take care of him, she said. He's not just a cute dog, he's a gift. As I left the house, the weight of everything I'd learned pressed against my **T. Leo trotted beside me, his tail wagging slightly as if to reassure me. I didn't have all the answers, and maybe I never would. But one thing was clear. Leo was more than I'd ever realized. He wasn't just my cute dog. He was my guardian, my comfort, and my constant reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things come in the simplest forms. That night, as I sat on the couch with Leo by my side, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The **T was still there, its mysteries unanswered. But it didn't matter. Leo was here, and that was all I needed. Whatever brought him to me, whatever bond connected us across time and space. I knew one thing. For certain, Leo had found me, and I'd never let him go. The days that followed were quieter, but they carried a new weight. I couldn't stop thinking about everything Isabella had told me. Leo seemed unbothered, his usual self, happy, curious, always by my side. But for me, every moment with him felt different. Now deeper somehow. I found myself watching him more closely, trying to notice every little thing he did, wondering if there was more meaning behind his actions than I had ever realized. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, I sat on the back porch with Leo. He rested his head on my lap, his eyes closed, the gentle rise and fall of his breath matching the rhythm of my own. The **T was still in the house, untouched, since the day I'd visited Isabella. I wasn't sure why, but part of me felt like I was waiting for what I didn't know. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves in the trees, and Leo lifted his head, his ears parking up. He stared out into the yard, his posture alert but not tense. I followed his gaze, but there was nothing there, just the familiar shapes of trees swaying gently in the breeze. What is it, boy? I asked, stroking his fur. He didn't look at me, his focus on Wavering. Then he stood up and trotted down the steps, pausing to glance back at me. I sighed, pushing myself up from the chair. All right. I'm coming, I said, smiling despite myself. Leo led me to the edge of the yard, to the same oak tree, where we'd found the rusted box. He sniffed the ground, then looked up at me, his tail wagging slightly. What now? I asked, crouching down. There didn't seem to be anything unusual, just the same patch of earth we'd stood on days ago. But then I noticed something. The ground seemed disturbed, as if it had been dug up, and then hastily covered again. My heart began to race as I reached out, brushing away the loose dirt with my hands. Leo stood beside me, his nose inches from the ground, watching my every move. After a few moments, I felt something hard beneath my fingers, a smooth, cold surface. It wasn't the box. This time, it was something else. Carefully, I uncovered it, revealing a small glass jar sealed tightly with a metal lid. Inside was a piece of folded paper yellowed with age. My hands trembled as I unscrewed the lid and pulled out the paper, unfolding it slowly. The handwriting was familiar, The same elegant cursified scene on the letters in the ch***T. The note was short, just a few lines, but it sent chills down my spine. To whoever finds this, trust Leo. He knows more than we ever will. Follow him when he leads you, and you'll find what you need. My eyes widened as I read the words again and again, trying to make sense of them. Follow him? What else was I supposed to find? I looked at Leo, who was now sitting calmly beside me, his tail swishing gently against the ground. You're full of surprises, aren't you? I said softly, running a hand through his fur. He gave me a look, one that felt almost amused, and then stood up, walking back toward the house, as if to say, you'll figure it out. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the note, trust Leo. It echoed in my mind, like a mantra, and I found myself wondering if I'd been overthinking everything. Maybe the answers weren't in the ch***T, or the letters or the locket. Maybe they were in the little moments, Leo's quiet presence, the way he seemed to know when I needed him, the way he had always been there even before I realized how much I needed him. The next morning I decided to let go of the need to understand everything. I took Leo for a long walk, letting him lead the way for once. He seemed happier, his tail wagging as we wandered through the neighborhood. At one point, he stopped in front of a park I hadn't visited in years. It was quiet, the kind of place that felt forgotten, but Leo trotted forward confidently, as if he knew exactly where he was going. He led me to a bench near the edge of the park, where the trees cast long shadows over the grass. I sat down watching as he sniffed around, his excitement palpable. And then, just as I was about to call him back, he stopped in front of an older man, sitting on another bench nearby. Leo wagged his tail, nudging the man's hand gently with his nose. The man looked up, startled at first, but then his expression softened. Well, hello there, he said, his voice warm and kind. I stood up, walking over to apologize, but the man waved me off with a smile. He's a good, cute dog, he said, scratching Leo behind the ears. Smart too. He reminds me of a doc I had once years ago. Something about the way he said it made me pause. What was his name? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Leo, the man said, his eyes distant, as if lost in a memory. He was the best cute dog I ever had, always seemed to know what I needed even before I did. I lost him a long time ago, but I've never forgotten him. My heart felt like it was in my throat. This is Leo. I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. At least I think he is. He found me, and I don't know how. But the man looked at me, his eyes widening with something between disbelief and hope. He stared at Leo, who was sitting calmly at his feet, and then back at me. You're saying he came back? He asked, his voice trembling. I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. I don't know how, but he did. For a long moment, we just stood there, the three of us, the weight of everything, unspoken, hanging in the air. And then the man smiled, his eyes glistening with tears. I don't know how either, he said softly, but maybe some things aren't meant to be understood. Maybe we're just meant to cherish them. As we walked back home that evening, the sun setting behind us, I felt lighter somehow, as if a part of the mystery had been resolved. Leo trotted beside me, his tail wagging, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to question anything. He was here, and that was enough. Whatever brought him to me, whatever connected us, I knew it was something rare, something beautiful, and I would never take it for granted. The following weeks felt like a dream, though a strangely grounded one. Leo seemed lighter, more playful, as though he'd completed some unspoken mission. I couldn't help but watch him more closely, trying to memorize every quirk, every movement, like I was afraid of missing something important. The man from the park, whose name I learned was Henry, stayed on my mind as well. We'd exchanged numbers that day, and he'd promised to tell me more about his Leo when we had time. But a part of me wondered if this story, our story, was one that didn't need every detail explained. One evening I found myself sitting on the living room floor, the ch***T open in front of me. Leo lay beside me, his head resting on my lap. As I went through the photographs and letters once more, the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows filled the room, and the warmth of the fireplace made everything feel strangely serene. As I picked up the locket again, I noticed something I hadn't before, a tiny engraving on the inside, barely visible. It read, "Love transcends time." I ran my finger over the words, feeling their weight settle in my ***T. Is that what this is? Leo? I whispered, looking down at him. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, and for a moment it felt like he understood everything. I was saying you're here, because we're supposed to find each other. Aren't we? Leo let out a soft huff. The kind he always made when he was perfectly content. It was comforting, grounding, even as my thoughts swirled with the impossibility of it all. I leaned back against the couch, clutching the locket tightly in my hand. You've been with Henry, with Isabella's family, with so many others. But why me? The question hung in the air unanswered, and maybe it didn't need an answer. Leo shifted closer, his warmth pressing against me as if to say you're enough. The next day, I decided to visit Henry again. I didn't tell him I was coming, but something about the idea of seeing him felt right. Leo seemed to agree, his energy palpable as we walked through the familiar streets toward the park. When we arrived at Henry's house, the door was already open, and he was sitting on the porch, a cup of coffee in hand. He smiled when he saw us, his face lighting up in a way that made my heart ache. I was hoping you'd come by, he said, motioning for me to sit beside him. Leo trotted up to him immediately, leaning against his leg like they'd known each other forever. Henry chuckled, scratching Leo behind the ears. He always had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world. We sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Henry told me stories about his Leo, how he'd been there through the hardest moments of his life, losing his wife, struggling with loneliness, finding his way back to hope. He saved me, Henry said quietly, his eyes fixed on the horizon in ways I didn't even realize until he was gone. I nodded, understanding more than I ever thought I could. That's what he does, I said softly. He finds people who need him. Henry turned to me, his expression filled with a mix of gratitude and wonder. And now he's found. You don't take that for granted. I won't. I promised, and I meant it. The days turned into weeks, and life fell into a new rhythm. Leo and I visited Henry often, sharing stories and moments that felt like they were meant to happen. The ***T remained in my living room, a constant reminder of the journey we'd been on, and the mysteries we might never fully unravel. And yet I felt at peace for the first time in a long time. I wasn't searching for answers. I was simply living, grateful for every moment I had with Leo. One night, as I sat by the fireplace with Leo curled up beside me, I thought about everything that had happened since he'd come into my life. The strange moments, the connections, the sense of something greater than myself. It all felt like pieces of a story I was lucky to be a part of. And as I stroked Leo's fur, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, I realized something I hadn't before. Maybe it wasn't about understanding everything. Maybe it was about trusting the moments, the connections, the love that found its way to us, even when we weren't looking for it. Leo had taught me that in his quiet, unassuming way. He'd show me that sometimes the most extraordinary things come, disguised as the simplest gifts, a cute dog, a locket, a letter left behind. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head, whispering, "Thank you, Leo, for everything." His tail thumped softly against the floor. A quiet acknowledgement of the words I didn't need to say out loud. Whatever brought him to me, however, he'd found his way into my life. I knew one thing for certain: I was better because of him. And in the end, that was all that. If this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us craft more engaging stories for you.